Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hey, everybody. Good evening. This is your pal, Barbecue17 here. And tonight is the December 1st, 2025 live cast episode of Barbecue's Bonfire, the official live stream of actionfigurebarbecue.com. So if someone else is going around saying they're the official stream of actionfigurebarbecue.com, then they are clearly lying, because the same way that Palpatine was the Senate, I am actionfigurebarbecue.com. So fun to be here tonight. If you are in the U.S. or you are someone who celebrates Thanksgiving, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving. We had a good trip. We drove up north to Cleveland, Ohio, and I had the chance to use the four-wheel drive on my Jeep. So I was pretty excited to be able to do that. We had some snow and some roads that got snowy pretty quickly and were very hilly. So that was a lot of fun. So I'm back safe, all filled up on turkey and other good things, and ready today to talk about some random toy stuff. So I got a couple things today. Again, the stuff I pick is usually just stuff that catches my interest over the week. It may not catch your interest at all, but I hope it does. I hope it's stuff that you maybe as a action figure collector or toy enthusiast of some kind, things that maybe you've been thinking about too, and this is just kind of my place to come out here and chat about it. If you are watching, if you are taking part, we would love to have you join us in the comments. Make a comment, ask a question, make an observation. That would be incredible, and have you as part of the discussion. So anyways, let's get started. So one thing I like to do to start things off is to go over on my website, actionfigurebarbecue.com. That's BARBECUE.com, and to check out what have been the most popular action figures reviews that I've had over the past week. Sometimes they're fairly similar, from week to week. Sometimes stuff doesn't change a lot, and then sometimes stuff changes quite a bit. So I will say I haven't had a lot of reviews the past week or so, but let's take a look at what's on there. ReHalloween 2025, the number 6 review is still the ReHalloween 2025, looking at assortment number 4 from Dr. Malcolm's Body Bags by Toad Frog. And I did hear a pretty exciting announcement earlier today that Toad Frog is actually partnering with another company to get these to retail sometime in 2026. So that's really cool. I like this line. I've got one more set to review. I know I said that last week, but I still want to review the alternate heads pack for the Dr. Malcolm's Body Bags. These are, kind of, I think 5.5 inch. They're monster figures. They were a Kickstarter project from a year or so ago, and you can swap the parts on them. So pretty cool, kind of like the old, some of the older lines that, you can do that kind of stuff on, maybe even influenced by the Monster Maker. But Dr. Malcolm's is interesting because it looks like it's actually going to have quite a bit of a future. Sometimes these Kickstarter lines, they come and they do offer cool stuff, but you never hear about, them partnering with any kind of, e-tailers or retail partners or anything. So it's nice to see that they are actually moving things forward. The number 5 is the number 1 from last week. It was Richard Cristobal King from G.I. Joe Classified series. This was my Halloween review this year, the last review of 31 Days of Toy Terror. And this is Crystal Ball from G.I. Joe Classified series, the action figure that Stephen King apparently created with his son, Owen King. I almost said Joe Hill. Owen King, different one of Stephen King's other son, and who was the file card name and inspiration for Sneak Peek, who still hasn't made his way into the Classified series yet. But this is one of my favorites from this year. Actually, a couple of my favorite G.I. Joe Classified series figures from this year on this list, but Crystal Ball, he might be at the very tippy top. He's just exceptional. I had the vintage figure, 86, 87 were the years I really got into the G.I. Joe line, because I'm a little younger than some folks that are, that collected a real American hero. But, the original figure is okay, but this one just takes it to a whole new level with the Cthulhu-inspired like alternate head, like this crystal ball, projecting this stuff to people. I don't know. Next up, number 4 is Cable from X-Men 97, the Marvel Legends series, X-Men 97. This This guy was on the list last week. I can't remember where he was at, but he was on there somewhere. So I've got more of the X-Men series, X-Men Marvel Legends 97 figures coming soon. They are coming. They haven't been there for a while, but they're going to show up at some point, believe me. Next up is a newer review. Number 3 is Monkey Wrench from G.I. Joe Classified series. Man, here's another guy from the 1986-87 era that I had as a kid. I liked him. He was okay. He was my first Dreadnought. I didn't really know a whole lot of what to do with him, but man, at this point, this guy is one of the top Classified series figures of the year. Absolutely phenomenal. Great accessories. I mean, takes the vintage figure and just runs with it. Some of the best Classified series figures are the ones that do take the original figure and just move it forward or do something really unique with it. And I think Monkey Wrench takes the original figure and just, starts dialing everything up to 11, adds in some new stuff. I mean, gives him some axes that, have monkey wrenches as the hilt. Makes the what would you call it? A trident or a harpoon that shoots out of his gun. Adds like a gas generator to it, so he can fire at something and then crank the generator and bring it back. Put maybe 2 little shotgun barrels or something on the bottom. You can actually put firing effects if you have some extra firing effects laying around. So fantastic. The number 1 though did jump up. It's another. Oh no, I'm sorry. Number 2 is Dash Rendar. So I think Dash has gone up a little bit there from the Black Series. One of the few Star Wars Black Series figures I've reviewed this week. Reviewed this year. One of the few Star Wars Black Series figures I've purchased this year. But again, sucker for Shadows of the Empire and 90s era expanded universe stuff. So I had to pick up Dash, even though I think he's a little disappointing. He doesn't really look like any rendition of Dash Rendar that I've seen rendered. He also only comes with one blaster. I mean, apparently, and this is just, again, this is a lot of off the cuff stuff on my end, but apparently Hasbro has said, or people have commented that Lucasfilm or Disney really doesn't want, it's got to be a Lucasfilm thing then, because Marvel Legends does it all the time, but that Lucasfilm doesn't like, the figures having lots of extra parts or hands or stuff thrown in there. So, I would have liked to have the Kenner Power of the Force 2, that weird backpack blaster rifle that Dash Rendar had. Again, that would have been great. He had a kind of a distinctive blaster that connected to his belt, like a laser tag gun or something, in some of the maybe the comics art and stuff, the comics or the trading cards art. Remember they did a whole series of trading cards too that had fantastic art. I think Dash Rendar could have really been, pepped up a little bit. It's fairly dull, to be honest, unless you just really, like Dash Rendar. So I do. So I got him. But number 1 is Cobra Commander with the combat armor. Interesting that they called him combat armor instead of Cobra Commander with combat armor instead of battle armor. Because I think the original figure was battle armor. I don't know. I mean, surely it's not a, I know He-Man has battle armor, Skeletor has battle armor, but I don't think you can trademark battle armor. It's just armor for battle. So anyways, Cobra Commander was not number 1 last week, but he has jumped up to the top of the list. So he's got team ambition, and we shouldn't expect anything else or anything less from Cobra Commander. So, well, let's chat today. I've got a couple things I've been thinking about this past week that have just, got me interested. And the first thing that I was thinking about this week was the recent failure. I don't want to get negative, but it was the recent failure of Hasbro's HasLab Tron project. So I don't know if you've seen this. Clearly, a lot of people either didn't see it or just didn't care. But Hasbro did a HasLab, which, if you're not familiar, HasLab is essentially Hasbro's take on a Kickstarter project. People go, people back it, they pledge, but they don't get charged until it funds. And if it doesn't fund, they don't get charged. So, they're not sitting on money for a while and collecting interest or anything. I mean, it's really just a pledge that you're going to back and, kind of getting your card information or PayPal or whatever. And Hasbro has had a pretty good track record with these. We're going to talk about some of the failures today, but they've had a pretty good track record. And, you know, the Transformers ones seem to have always done well. Most of the Marvel ones have been great. You've surely seen, you know, people with the massive Sentinel from a few years back, Galactus from a year or two ago back. I mean, incredible figures that have just jumped in the Giant Man, you know, figures that have just really jumped in the aftermarket too. I mean, these are only available through Hasbro Pulse's HasLab. So, you know, if you miss them, you miss them. They're not something that goes back into production. Now, G.I. Joe has also had great success here, besides 4 classified series projects now. You know, they did the His Tank, then they did the Dragonfly, which I honestly almost forgot which one it was, and it's right behind me. You can see it. I'm pointing if you're just listening to this on your commute or something. The Rattler, which is now in my living room, and they just had the Snowcat, which was a successful campaign as well. And I believe every one of those has unlocked all their stretch goals. Ghostbusters has had some successes. The Proton Pack. I know they had the was it the Ecto one for the Plasma series figures, the 6-inch line. I mean, a lot of stuff has been. We're going to talk about HeroScape, because HeroScape was a game that a revival of HeroScape, which did not succeed, but HeroQuest did. So Hasbro has had some pretty good success. A lot of Star Wars successes, obviously. The Katana, you know, Jabba the Hutt's sail barge. They had the Ghost, the ship from Rebels, and then they had, you know, Mando's ship as well for the Mandalorian. But they've had some that have failed as well. So we're going to talk about some of those. But the recent one is Tron related, and it was called the Tron Here's the Grid 3 3/4-inch collector set. It was a set of 5 figures from the original Tron film, not from one of the, not from Legacy or was that what it was called? What was the last one called? I don't remember. And the newest is Tron Ares. It's not from one of the newer films. It's one of the 1982 classic. You know, you got Flynn, Yori, Sark program, and a Tron action figure. 2 of the light cycles were included. And then, you know, you had this shelf display kind of thing that actually has LEDs in it. And it does light. It was supposed to light up, so it kind of looked like, you know, the grid of the world of Tron, and it failed. It did not succeed. It did not meet its backing. It was a $260 set, $259.99. I believe most of the time shipping is included in these. I might be wrong there, but November 24th, 2025 was the deadline. It needed to reach 10,000 backers to succeed, to go into production, and it only reached 1,386 backers. So the campaign ended. I have some thoughts on this. I think a lot of people have talked about this, but one, I'm not sure we've seen Tron merchandise do exceptionally well. Tron has a fan base. There are people who like Tron. There are people who love Tron. There are people who, you know, really get excited for the movies, enjoy the original. But does Tron have the fan base where 10,000 people are interested in purchasing a $260 set of 3 3/4-inch action figures, 2 motorcycles, and a oddly shaped light up base? I only say oddly shaped because I'm looking at this base, and it's something that I would think if I was purchasing it, I might have a problem finding a great place for it to go. Now, granted, about every HasLab, you can have a hard time finding a place to put them, because, I mean, they're large. They've kind of talked about before that they're supposed to be, you know, dream projects or something. And I will say, some people really get upset. Some people really have a lot of feelings that aren't too positive about Hasbro using this model. I will say I think it's smart for things like this because if you put out something that is massive, that is expensive, and it fails, I think it can give the wrong impression about a toy line. We're going to talk about some of the failures here in a second, but one of them is the Ghost Rider car. Robbie Reyes, who is the Ghost Rider who drives like a muscle car. I think he came out in 2014. I think the character was introduced in 2014. Was a HasLab from 2022, and this did not succeed. It was a $350 light up muscle car that included the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider figure, and then had a bunch of other more desirable characters who were added as stretch goals. This did not succeed. Now, granted, Marvel Legends has been around long enough that I think it could weather something like that happening, but I do kind of think, if you put some of this stuff at retail and it fails, you might have retailers decide, oh, we don't really want to carry as much product anymore. You might have smaller e-tailers that, really get, kind of turned off of the line by that. Again, Marvel Legends is probably not the best example because I think it's one of the few lines that has really, really, really stood the test of time. Marvel Legends continues to be, really popular. I mean, I was kind of peeking earlier, and if you go on something like Reddit Action Figures, over half the posts are Marvel Legends related. But some of these things are collectible items that may not do well at traditional retail and may be really hard to ship. If Hasbro has to sell them to a place like, Big Bad or Entertainment Earth or lots of the great smaller retailers as well, you're talking big boxes that ship to somewhere else, and then they have to ship those to collectors. It could be a bit of a fiasco. So I understand their reasoning behind it, their logic. I have to wonder, though, why they pitched Tron, one, as a 3 3/4 inch collector set. Listen, I know there are lots of people who still love 3 3/4 inches as their dominant scale. That's how they prefer their Star Wars figures. That's how they prefer their, sorry, I got to turn my phone off, man. People aren't commenting, but they sure are calling. They prefer their Star Wars figures, their G.I. Joe figures. They still collect the classic lines. Understand that completely. There are not a lot of modern 3 3/4 inch lines, though. I do wonder if something Tron related would have done better if these were in a 1/12 scale, and they would have fit in with G.I. Joe, the Classified series. They would have fit in with Marvel Legends. They could have fit in with Star Wars, the Black series. These other lines that Hasbro is actually making right now. I don't think you could have done the massive box thing that they wanted to have, but is that a big loss? Maybe they could have done like a smaller one that you could have one figure on and light it up and look really cool, or two figures. They could have maybe still done the light cycles, just not the massive box thing that is just kind of an odd choice. And again, really, it was an odd choice to do such a big display thing for really what is 5 3 3/4 inch figures, 1/18 scale, and 2 small motorcycles with the little with the light strips or whatever that are at the end. So it's kind of an odd campaign. It launched with Tron Ares, when Tron Ares is out in theaters, but at the same time, I haven't really heard a lot of people talking about Tron Ares either. I'm not sure. I'm right now just kind of looking up to see how Tron Ares has done. And, I haven't heard anything awful about it. So apparently the final domestic gross is 73.2 million, worldwide gross 142.2 million, and what's the budget? Oh, a budget of 180 million. So, fairly expensive movie maybe, and just did not do all that well. So I kind of have a theory about this. I don't know, maybe this is a little bit of a conspiracy theory, so maybe you want to put your tinfoil hat on there. I think, and there's other things in this list, and there are other releases from Hasbro that make me kind of think this, and this may not even be much of a conspiracy. Maybe some people are going to be like, well, duh, that's what they do. I kind of think that Disney really, because of the relationship that Hasbro and Disney have, I mean, how many Disney licenses does Hasbro have? Quite a few. I think Disney probably really does dictate to Hasbro to some extent what they want. And I'm wondering how much Disney is pushing, hey, we really want a Tron line. When you think about it, Tron is an 80s property. Here's a sci-fi action property. Here is a property that Disney owns, that they flat out own. And so it makes a lot of sense that Disney would want to push for this. I think Disney has said a couple times, might have been sometime this year or last year, that they really wanted to have more properties that targeted, a younger male demographic. And again, video games are still very, very, very popular. Video games are, a massive, massive, massive industry. And here is a entertainment property that Disney owns that is about video games. So I could see Disney saying, we really want you to push Tron. We need a Tron line out there. And maybe Hasbro's response is, okay, we're going to go full in on this HasLab, and we're going to see how it does. And maybe Hasbro kind of knows, I don't think this is going to happen. I think this is definitely a HasLab that most people looked at and very early on said, this is not going to fund. It doesn't go with the previously established collection. It doesn't feel like something that is going to be like a one and done kind of thing. It doesn't feel like something that Hasbro is going to, supplement much in the future. And I'm kind of wondering if this was something Hasbro used to say, listen, we pitched a premium product. We tried to get this out there, and it did not work. I think sometimes with Star Wars The Black Series, I think we've definitely seen where Hasbro has probably had certain characters or, media things kind of dictated them by, Disney / Lucasfilm saying, we want you to push these characters. We know infamously that Hasbro did not have any information about some of the main characters from The Force Awakens and some of the other newer Star Wars movies. But they had, information about the characters that Lucasfilm and Disney let them know about in advance. So I imagine that's still happening. Hey, we've got the Collector here saying good evening from Mexico. Thank you, Collector. We are the Collector, D3W. We are glad to have you on board with us tonight as we talk about the Tron HasLab that recently failed and some of the other Hasbro HasLabs that have failed as well. So Tron, I really wonder if this was almost a proof of concept for Hasbro in a way to say, listen, we're going to try it. We're going to put it out there. And they did. I mean, it's not a horrible product. I think the pricing seems very, very high, especially for, again, 1/18 scale figures that are fairly plain. Now, Tron does have that very minimalistic style of a, 1980s video game, but as the figures, they're fairly plain, they're fairly basic. The motorcycles are not that, they're not that busy, they're fairly streamlined and sleek and, kind of basic looking, and this failed. So maybe it was a way for Hasbro to say, listen, right now there is not the kind of market for Tron that we need to sustain a brand. You know what? It's got to be, it must be cheaper for Hasbro to mock up this concept, get someone to put something out, and put it on HasLab rather than to go forward with a line, send it to, retailers, get retailers to buy it, and then have potentially a flop on their hands. That's what I think. So let's talk about some of the other. If you have any thoughts or comments about the Tron failure here, go ahead and throw them in the comments, man. I'm gonna try to address them if I can. Again, I don't know everything, and like I always put on here, you know, we are unrehearsed, unresearched. Opinion on this, as long as you can get the vintage, get it. And all this HasLab and Club Grayskull things, I'm not on it. I can understand. I mean, obviously there is a big, you know, I can understand going after the vintage stuff. You know, I definitely have a lot of things where I enjoy collecting vintage, but I will say, man, there are so many HasLab things and Club Grayskull as well, where the, you know, the stuff has been, improvement might be the right word. Maybe it's not. I mean, obviously the appeal of the vintage stuff is because we had it as a kid or because it's so iconic. You know, obviously, like I love having, you know, a vintage Castle Grayskull. It's not my original childhood Castle Grayskull, but it's like the one I had as a kid. So I enjoy that. I do have plenty of other things that are my original childhood pieces. And so, you know, it's pretty cool to have those. But I do like this idea, again, for some of these items that companies do put it out there and kind of say, is there a, you know, is there a audience for this? Because for years, the answer was no. I mean, we had companies that say, you know, we don't do vehicles. Vehicles don't sell. Playsets don't sell. Large items don't sell. And the only person who could determine what action figures you got was Walmart and Target and Toys R Us. That's the case. You had the retailers. Hey, we've got Weird Fantastic Toy Adventures with us today. Hello, hello. I mean, for years, that was the case. If retailers would not buy it, you were not going to get it. So Marvel Legends stuff. I mean, again, it was constrained. If we're talking about, you know, the late 90s to the early 2000s, the mid 2000s, yes, we had places like Big Bad Toy Store and stuff, Entertainment Earth still then, but the primary buyers were Walmart, Target, Toys R Us. If they would not purchase it, if their toy buyers would not buy it, it was not going to get made. And now, at the very least, Hasbro, Mattel, some of the stuff, other companies, smaller companies, they can throw stuff out there and say, is there really enough interest? Everybody's asking for it. Is there really enough interest? So I want to look at what is Hasbro's other failures, because they've had some great successes with their HasLabs. The first one I think is really funny. The first HasLab was Jabba the Hutt sail barge, the Katana. It was very successful. That thing is very expensive to get a hold on now. But the first failure was 2019, summer of 2019, and it was Cookie Monster. I don't know how this project came about. I didn't look that much into it, but yes, the Tron set did fail spectacularly. I think people just did not have confidence in it, and they didn't bid. Weird Fantastic Toy Adventure said, yep, it failed spectacularly. That is true. Cookie Monster was another one that I think really failed spectacularly. It had a very, very low, one of the lowest numbers I could find. It was 3,000 backers needed to fund a 38-inch Cookie Monster puppet. This was August 2019. The puppet was going to be $299.99, and this failed. Why is Cookie Monster fail? It's one of those things where, is there an, you know, when any of these things come out, I mean, you can look at, man, the Tron set could have been nice as anything. It could have been incredible. It could have been a value, but you totally have to look at, is there an audience there? And I think there was not an audience for a 38-inch Cookie Monster. You know, I like Cookie Monster. People reference Cookie Monster. I guarantee people know Cookie Monster more than most of the characters. I guarantee most people that random people off the street, more people know Cookie Monster than most of the characters we talk about on this show. But Are they running out to buy a 38-inch Cookie Monster puppet? No, because there's no audience for it. Another thing that failed was 2021. We're not going to talk about this all day, but the Star Wars Black Series Rancor. It was a weird, mismanaged project that had weird stretch goals, and the price was like $350. So it was very high. It seemed very high. I mean, I know it was a big project, but it's hard sometimes. It's hard sometimes to figure some of these things out because they talked about all the articulation, all the parts required for the Rancor. One comment was it was going to have 900 paint applications. Okay, that sounds really cool. At the same time, you know, when I'm just sitting there for a second thinking, I'm like, isn't the Rancor mostly brown? Like, I know it would be more complex than that. I mean, I know it's more complex than like the old, you know, Kenner Rancor, but it was a hard sell, and it had really poor stretch goals. I think the first stretch goal was a cardboard. Maybe it was a Gamorrean guard carded, but we already had a Gamorrean guard. One was a cardboard backdrop, and one was like some skulls, which were cool, but definitely things that just should have came with the project. They didn't feel like stretch goals to really encourage someone to, you know, kind of tip over. I think the stretch goals on these we're going to see are very, very, very important. People know that the companies are already baking these stretch goals in. They're already baking these stretch goals in to the project. So the Rancor was one that failed. Another one that failed, I mentioned earlier, man, yeah. Weird Fantastic Toy Adventure says Star Wars, I don't know, but it seems to be dying. I feel that way too. I will say I went from being, you know, for a while there, and this is a tangent, but I was all on board with the Black Series. I was purchasing nearly everything that came out. I, you know, was watching every show. I was reading every book, and somewhere along the way, you know, it just lost me. I enjoyed Kenobi. I think that was maybe the last thing. No, I watched the last season of Mando, and I really liked it. Some of the projects since then just haven't seemed to jump out at me. And we also currently don't have Disney Plus, haven't had it for a little bit. But again, it's one of those things that I think something can, you know, Star Wars is just too big of a brand. It's always going to be around, but I think what it is going to change over time. I think the right Star Wars project could get me absolutely, you know, back into it again. The collector says seems dying. What you need to realize is the horse is dead, Bill. I don't think Star Wars is dead, but I do think it's just a brand that's resting right now. Disney's trying, but again, the past year has been pretty quiet. I don't know. I think the right book series of Star Wars could get me back interested. I think I've enjoyed most of the comics. I will say I've kept up with the comics and trades for the most part, and I've really enjoyed them. I've loved picking up. There are some Black Series figures I still pick up. Like I said, I bought Shizor, I bought Dash Rendar. I did pick up the new Luke and Leia, and then the larger R2 and the Revenge of the Sith card. So I don't know, when they do hit the right nostalgia button for me, I still will come back. I'm interested to see what The Mandalorian. Weird Fantastic Toy Adventure says Ollie is full of Star Wars toys that no one wants. That LOL. That is true. I talked about this a little last week. Ollie's is filled with Star Wars toys. They're also filled with Marvel toys. They're also filled with some G.I. Joe toys. All of these toys do come from a really specific period. They do come from, I want to say it's like the end of 2021 through maybe the beginning of the end of 2022. There's like a real specific period where Hasbro absolutely over-ordered. I don't have the details on this, so I don't want to get into it, but I think there was even a lawsuit that some of Hasbro's shareholders have undertaken that was about Hasbro sort of not being upfront with how much stock they had on hand. I think when COVID hit, people were stuck at home. They weren't spending money. They weren't eating out. They weren't traveling. Some people were getting stimulus checks and also working from home or already getting paid. So they were collecting. I mean, there were a lot of people who were jumping on board and starting to collect during the pandemic, at the height of it. And I think companies ramped up their production. And then when things kind of started tapering off, they were stuck with things. So, yeah. Collector says, what do you mean I still need to get one of... do you mean I really still get one of those rare Shurikopters? I am shocked. So one, some of this stuff was very, very, very overmade, overproduced. Two, you do have stuff from Marvel and Star Wars during a period when there were quite a few high-profile flops. Some of the Black Panther stuff still sold. You know, I think especially with kids, but people still picked up things that were Black Panther. There was the High Republic show. There was stuff from the Acolyte, though I will say I don't see a lot of that at Ollie's. But I do see a lot of the young Jedi Adventures or something that was set during the High Republic. I thought the High Republic books were pretty good. I definitely read the first whole installment or whatever. It was like 3 major novels and 3, younger novels and 3 comics. They were pretty good. But the show, it was something that I don't think anybody was asking for. I don't think anybody was that interested. And they overproduced like crazy. And yeah, they're still sitting at Ollie's too. And it's been about the 2nd or 3rd Christmas that those are still there, taking up a lot of space. Let's talk about the Eternals figures. Man, they are still there. I could probably go and pick up the full series at Ollie's right now. They overproduced. People weren't interested in them. And it was kind of a perfect storm just making them sit there. I know my Ollie's will every now and then get in something new, but they are just sitting on this stock, and I just don't know what they're going to do with it. Maybe there's going to have to be a thing like Funko did where they have to bury, like Hasbro has to bury millions of it. So, but anyways, let's jump back there, talking about some of these things. You had the Reva, the third sister's lightsaber from Kenobi. There's a HasLab that did not succeed. 2023, it came out in conjunction with Kenobi, and it was a $500 lightsaber. It was from a new character. Again, I've never purchased one of the Force FX lightsabers, but if I did, I assume I would purchase like somebody that was, very significant to me in terms of like a Star Wars character. Like, I mean, it would be somebody like, Luke Skywalker or Count Dooku or, Anakin or Obi-Wan Kenobi or, maybe somebody that I've always had as kind of a favorite, maybe Mace Windu's lightsaber. But to do a Force FX $500 lightsaber for a brand new character, it's just a strange thing. Weird Fantastic Toy Venture says, I noticed the latest Legends figures look cheap with no paint apps. I have not noticed that, but I did get a couple of new ones lately. I've got some right here. I'm going to take a look real quick. This is completely unplanned. So if something like falls over and smashes me, this is like stuff I've got sitting here that I haven't reviewed yet in this box. So let's take a look. Let's take a look in Barbecue's box. Let's see what I got. So one of them I got recently was Beast, Astonishing X-Men Beast. And he doesn't have a ton of detail on his fur, but I will say yellow and black is hard to pull off sometimes. And it actually looks pretty good here. The lines are pretty clean. He's a fairly sizable figure, I'm not happy with, he's fairly sizable. And check this out. He has some crazy movement on those butterfly joints or pectoral hinges. It's almost like his arms are behind him if you want. So he's actually pretty cool. He's got 2 portraits. The face is really well done. Beast doesn't quite need a face print, but he looks pretty good. Now, I did get World War II Wolverine. A lot of his parts are molded in the color of plastic they should be, rather than paint. So you're right. There's not as many paint details. He does have quite a few accessories, though. Honestly, though, he's one of my favorites. In recent memory, my dad actually called me today. My dad was out somewhere, and he called. He's like, "Have you seen this World War II Wolverine?" And I was like, "Oh man, I just got him." Yeah. So he's actually really neat. But yeah, there aren't as many. I don't know. I'm looking now. He's got his t-shirt collar painted, the collar, and then his shirt's painted. The buckles on his web gear are painted. He does have a belt buckle painted, so I don't know. I don't know. Wolverine does have quite a bit going on here. Rachel does have all of her little spikes painted, but the rest of the figure is really just a red body. It's kind of accurate, but yeah. And Farrell's not bad, but again, there is not a lot of paint here. You're right. Yeah, there's not dry brush and stuff anymore. It's very basic. They are using molding. They're very clean looking, but they're definitely not doing. Farrell has a couple little things on her arms and knees. So there are some places where it's definitely much less than they used to on some figures. I will say on some of the Marvel Legends, I do like the clean comic book look, but there are some that are really basic looking. So you're right, they are dropping it there. Reva's lightsaber was one that failed. We talked about earlier, what was the other one? Ghost Rider car. It was a new character. I mean, he's 2014 and the thing came out in 2022, but for a character like Robbie Reyes, we're not talking about a character that's had a movie. We're not talking about a character that's had, a huge successful TV show or anything. It was kind of a weird character to base a whole HasLab campaign on. We do see new characters sometimes. The Ghost from Rebels was a fairly new ship that came with the Rebels crew, who was a fairly new to Star Wars. In the long run, but had 4 seasons of a television show to kind of win people over, endear folks to the characters. So that was a success. One of the other ones that failed was, if it was Johnny Blaze, it might have funded, says Weird Fantastic Toy Ventures. You're right. Now they did release, Johnny Blaze has been released a few times, and Denny Ketch as well has been, say it right, Denny Ketch? Is there a V in there? I don't know why I want to say that. It's weird sometimes you say things in your head and then you say them out loud. And Danny Ketch, yeah, I don't know why I want to say Ketch, like there was a V in there. I don't know, maybe I've been hanging around a different crowd or something. Johnny Blaze could have funded. Johnny Blaze probably could have funded if it was a car. I don't know. It was just a weird campaign, and I think people realized that they were going to lock. I think everybody knew the figures were already baked in, and they were locking really good figures behind the Kickstarter. You were really paying for everything. The figures were locked behind it. There was also a HeroScape game that a revival of HeroScape. This is really not about gaming on here, but if you never played HeroScape, it is a skirmish type game. It was fairly simple to play. Hasbro released it in the early to mid 2000s, and actually probably the mid 2000s. And I really liked it. I did used to play it. I still have a lot of the figures and parts. And what was really cool is, rather than, it had the aesthetic of like the really neat miniatures that you might find at a gaming store that people use for, D&D or Warhammer, but they were plastic and they were sold in little packs, and you could buy a whole pack of your troop builders, or you could buy a pack of lots of new characters, and they were very affordable. It was a very fun, fast-paced game. You could get someone in it who, wasn't terribly familiar with wargaming, and they could have a great time pretty quickly. It was really cool, but Hasbro did this massive $250 version of the game as a revival, and instead of the figures being really cool and painted, they were just basic plastic figures, kind of with the idea of like, oh, you paint them yourself. I always kind of felt HeroScape was excellent, but it was it was kind of the lazy war gamers war game. And so suddenly when the figures are like, I have to paint them, I'm like, well, I can get lots of figures to paint. I liked HeroScape because they were, they were plastic, they were durable, and I didn't have to paint them. So, but that one didn't fail. I think that one didn't succeed. It failed. Someone else is picking it up though. So, yeah. So a lot of these campaigns have not done well, but there's obviously been way more successes than failures. I think it's interesting the idea that Hasbro uses this sometimes to push things out, though. Maybe they really didn't think a Tron line was going to succeed. This is a much better way to test the water, to show it to Disney or whomever that, listen, this is just not going to work. And here's our evidence. Here's our test. We're putting it out there, and folks are rejecting it. The Cookie Monster, I have no idea where that comes from. I don't know why they pitched a Cookie Monster on Hasbro Pulse. It is the weirdest thing to me that they did that. But they did. So anyways, I was going to talk about some Super 7 stuff. Super 7's had a lot of stuff over the past year. Unfortunately, they had to lay off a ton of people. Back in May, they got hit really hard with when tariffs were still just constantly changing. Super 7 has had a lot of issues with losing licenses. I think all of their Disney licenses and stuff, Simpsons and everything, were just kind of ended or pulled or whatever happened there. I don't know. They did install a new CEO, Jeff Walker, I think, who has a long history with Mattel and other companies, so someone very experienced. Brian Flynn still does own the company, but he stepped down to a different role, more of a creative, I think, chief creative officer role. And Jeff Walker is now the CEO of the company. But last week, Super 7 did close their 2 stores. They had one in San Francisco and they had one in San Diego, and they both closed. So that is a thing that a lot of people have been trying to read a lot into. Is this Super 7 just trying to be leaner and reinvent themselves, or just, figure out where they need to go next during a, really tough time for the toy industry and action figures specifically right now? Or is this kind of a, harbinger of something worse yet to come? I don't want to read a lot into it right now. I do hope for the best. It hurts me that Diamond Select Toys has recently, gone away. And I do think a lot of time in the, if you read a lot of people on social media, when you read about action figure, man, you could read if you took what everybody said, I mean, you would have every action figure company, people wishing for them to be gone, and we'd have nothing left. There'd be nobody left to make anything, because it feels like a lot of times like everybody hates everything. But I know Super 7 has some issues, but Super 7 does make some really cool, very niche product too. I want to show something off real quick. I'm probably not going to review these because the oddest thing has happened. I rarely ever take anything, I rarely ever leave anything in the package. I am an out-of-box collector. Things do not sit in the package at my house, hardly ever. Even when I get them, I suddenly get them out of the package. But I recently got the Super 7. Sorry, I'm trying to get them where I'm not getting the light. Is that better? Recently got the Super 7. They're called ReAction Plus. I like ReAction figures. I really do like the ReAction horror figures, especially the Universal monsters and classic horror stuff. I know sometimes they are extremely overpriced, but they're just something that nobody else is making. And they are, I do feel like they are catering to a very small audience of people. And I am thankful when I do get something new. And I picked these up. So these ones are ReAction Plus. These ones are built like the classic A Real American Hero G.I. Joe figures. They have an O-ring. They've got that, the knee hinge. They've got the, what do you guys call it? It's not a T-joint. They've got that metal piece that in their crotch that holds on to the O-ring. and also the thighs are attached to. They've got the swivel hinge shoulders. They've got a bicep swivel. They've got a hinge elbow, and they have kind of a ball jointed neck, or the neck's in there a little bit. These are more articulated, but the card is really incredible here. I mean, Super7 does put out a very fully finished product a lot of the time. I mean, their art is great, their aesthetics are great, their concepts can be really good on some of their stuff. And I understand sometimes they are inconsistent on some things, but man, I love this Wolfman that looks like a classic G.I. Joe. And it's, you got it says Lon Chaney's the Wolfman. He comes with the cane, with the silver tip cane that ends up, being what Sir John Talbot uses to kill him. Yeah, they are cool looking figures, Weird Fantastic Toy Adventures. But you know what? They are so cool looking in the package that I really don't think I'm going to take these out of the package. I've got Dracula here, and it's not just Dracula, because some companies, hey, we got Mike Fee Masters from at Mike's Universe. Hello, we're glad to have you. This Dracula, and again, one thing I like with Super7 is they don't just do a generic Dracula. No. This is Bela Lugosi's Dracula. You do actually have to go through the Bela Lugosi, the Lugosi estate. And so this is like a really nice artwork of Bela Lugosi as Dracula. And the figure even looks quite a bit like him for, again, a 1/18 scaled, a real American hero take. He does have a cloth cape, but he comes with the candle that he uses, that he holds when he shows up at his castle at the beginning of the film. Where did I get these? I got these from Big Bad Toy Store. So I think they are $20 each. I think that is correct. And again, if you're just thinking about a plastic G.I. Joe, it seems a lot, but as a complete package, as something that I just don't think anybody else would make, they are pretty cool. Last up is the Creature from the Black Lagoon. He's a very bright neon green. He's brighter than I would expect, but at the same time, he does kind of feel like he could fit in with the Mega Marines, the G.I. Joe 90s Mega Marines, who I really liked. He's very cool. The card is nice. There's even a little bit of a file card on the back. Man, I'm having a hard time holding this up here. You can tell I'm not used to actually doing this part yet. But it does have like their name, and it even has, like with G.I. Joe, how they have their kind of their role, like the Wolfman, name, Larry Talbot, birthplace, Lonwelly, Wales. So yeah, they're pretty cool. They're very neat. And again, one of the things I do enjoy about Super7, I do appreciate, is they do some really random stuff that I don't think a lot of other companies would do. And one thing I've been mulling in my head, I'm getting ready to wrap up for the night here. If I'm streaming and like my wife and daughter are watching TV or something, or watching streaming services or anything, it does seem to mess with the stream quite a bit. So I do have to be like, hey guys, don't use the internet for like an hour or so. What Weird Fantastic Toy Adventures has to head to bed himself. So yeah, well, we're wrapping up. But one thing I've been thinking about, as we've been talking about these HasLabs that have failed, I've been thinking about Super7 this week. I've been thinking about, different action figures is, one of the things with these companies is there's almost like a triangle to what they sometimes have to figure out for their product. One of those is your offering, or who is the audience, the niche. If you're who are you targeting? If you're targeting like Marvel, man, Marvel's a huge audience. I mean, there are all kinds of people who love Marvel. Maybe something like One Piece, that's pretty big still. When you start talking about, maybe like one particular punk band, or some random 80s movie, you start narrowing your focus a little bit there. And then places have to think about the next part of the triangle is thinking about, you've got your offering, your niche up here. You've got your availability and your price. Like, how are people purchasing these, and are they affordable? And I think there's some pull back and forth here. If you're the only person, let's say, like, for me, right now, there's not a whole lot of people making Universal Monster stuff. There's more than there has been at times, but it's not something like Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles right now, everybody has a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle license. If you can think of a company that hasn't made a Ninja Turtles item in like the last year or two, I would be surprised. So I think companies with the Ninja Turtle license have to really think about their availability and pricing, because there's so many other people putting out product, and you really have to think about, am I offering something that's going to really appeal, to folks versus what somebody else is offering. I think the third part of the triangle is that quality aspect. The quality does have to be at a certain level for folks to buy it as well. You're constantly having this interplay. And I think Super7 does sometimes put out really nice quality stuff. And sometimes, their quality can be middling. Some of their reactions are always stellar. They're always on point. Their ultimates sometimes have quality issues. But overall, I think a lot of this stuff is pretty nice looking, at least. Visually, it usually looks pretty cool. And I think it hits what they're going for, even though they're really sometimes really going for a very toyetic look that not everybody is interested in. They do sometimes get some really targeted offerings, stuff that no one else is going to offer. I mean, they have like a Biz Markie figure, that's not something you're going to typically find at Walmart, or someone's going to be able to pick from like, 5 or 10 different companies, like, oh, whose Biz Markie figure do I like the best? I recently started reading Chainsaw Man, and I found a Chainsaw Man figure at Ross a week or two ago, and I was kind of looking. It's like, oh my gosh, there's Bandai's got Bandai Spirits Chainsaw Man. There's a Figma Chainsaw Man. There's a SH Figure Arts Chainsaw Man. Lots of people are putting those out. Super7 sometimes picks characters that nobody else is doing, musicians that no one else is doing. But I think where they ran the problems the last couple years is they were getting licenses that other people were doing. And with their price and their quality, people were going to competitors. They were originally not very available. You had to order them online, but they started going into Walmart and Target, and then their product was coming up against stuff that was significantly cheaper. And I don't think they adjusted for that. So, but I'm not going to get into all that tonight. I don't want to talk about Super7 that much tonight. I had a bunch of notes, but I spent way too much time talking about the HasLab and stuff. But again, Tron is one of those things. That's a very small license at this point. If you are a Tron fan, is there really anybody else to go to except Hasbro? And the answer was no. But the price and availability. The availability was pretty small through a HasLab. It wasn't sitting at Walmart. So we don't really know that everybody who was interested knew about the Tron project, but we also have the price being pretty high for entry. It's pretty pricey. What did we say? It was $260 to fund the HasLab. I think that was correct. It's pretty high. Man, you had to great that you're offering in your niche there, but your price and availability was kind of far out there, and it seemed like people had questions about the quality. And I don't think just the power of that offering a niche, was able to win people over there. But anyways, we are coming in at the 1 hour mark, so I'm going to wrap things up. I'm glad everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Oh my gosh, we've got another visit again. He was popular last week. Ladies and gentlemen, we have the return of Crypto. Yes, Crypto is here, direct from Metropolis and the Fortress of Solitude. Hello, Mr. Crypto. How are you? Well, he was originally from Krypton, but as of late, he was hanging out in Metropolis and the Fortress of Solitude. Yeah. Crypto always likes to show up on the show. Thank you, buddy. He's a good boy. Thanks to Umbreon 13 for bringing him in. Oh, he didn't like some.
I was holding
He didn't like something there. He's for my crypto's a little nicer than the movie crypto though. So, but anyways, guys, I hope y'all have a great week. For everyone watching, keep checking out my reviews, hot and fresh daily at actionfigurebarbecue.com, and I'll see everyone hopefully next week again at 8:30 Eastern. Take care.